Hello again, and welcome to the webinar on zero manual work approach to contractor management. I'm Thomas Paris, Perry Shepherd's Director of Marketing, and I'm extremely excited to be joined by Vita Kampmann today, who's been working in mining and oil and gas for almost 20 years at global corporations such as Suncor. And as such, has developed a solid expertise in supply chain management, contracts, and procurement. Very important to know, a key highlight of her career was the Fort Hills Mine project, a 17 billion, not million, a $17 billion capital project where she managed the full contract life cycle. How are you, Vita?
I'm great, Tom. I'm happy to be here. How are you?
I'm doing great. Really excited about the topic today. It's a topic that has been a pain for years, if not decades, in mining. So finally, it looks like there is a better way to manage contractors. And that's what we're going to talk about today, right?
Yes, I'm very excited.
Awesome. Well, the mic is yours.
Perfect. So, again, welcome to everybody. And without further ado, just want to be mindful of timing. So, let's just get started. So, I'd like to begin today by discussing some of the key challenges that exist in the mining industry, starting with risk management. So, mining operations often occur in very challenging environments, increasing operational risks. Procurement teams need to be considerate of these risks while also ensuring the safety and reliability of their supply chains and their operations. Moving on to supplier relationship management, building and maintaining strong relationships is crucial. Maintaining a diverse supplier base, negotiating contracts, and ensuring consistent quality can be very demanding. And then in terms of cost management, cost optimization is a perpetual concern in mining procurement and the overall industry. Balancing cost reductions while maintaining quality and operational efficiency is a very delicate task, especially in very volatile market conditions. Some other risks that aren't listed here, but that exist are, of course, environmental and social responsibility. There is increasing pressure on mining companies to adopt sustainable and ethical practices. Procurement teams need to be able to source material and contractors responsibly, considering all of the environmental impacts and ethical labor practices. Regulatory compliance is another one. The mining industry is heavily regulated due to environmental, safety, and labor standards. And so ensuring compliance across the supply chain, especially when dealing with multiple suppliers across various large regions, can be a very complex task. And then, of course, we have the talent shortage. So the current workforce is aging. There's a perpetual problem of attracting trades due to competition, et cetera. Also requiring constant training, retraining, forming new relationships, and also increases the demand to increase that contractual labor force to keep the operations running smoothly. And so addressing these challenges often requires a very multifaceted approach that combines strategic planning, strong supplier relationships, technological innovation, risk mitigation strategies, and a commitment to sustainability and compliance. And so, how do we do that? So, with regards to risk management, safety is a huge concern. And while there are aspects to mitigate it, it's always with regards to lagging indicators, at least in my experience. Monthly performance management meetings were always a snapshot look back in time, which made it difficult to address at-risk behavior after it already had occurred. It would have benefited everybody from operations to supply chain to have had the ability to have data in real time to address the issues as they came up. With regards to supplier relationship management, the amount of negotiating power to negotiate better outcomes that would have existed had the data been readily there would have been a huge factor in this space. The ability as a client to take back control over your resourcing. On average, contractors amount to 42% of the workforce, even more so in my experience. And so, how do you manage the quality of the relationship of each one? You have to prioritize. And sometimes the little guys, they know you're not watching them because you're focused on the big guys. And so there's often a lot there to be considered. And then, of course, cost management. You simply do not go from an $8 billion project becoming a $17 billion project after all is said and done without sacrificing a lot in this space. For us, time and materials was often chosen for traceability and visibility. But again, in my experience, this wasn't always the easiest way to be able to validate costs. And for those that don't know, the project was an open pit truck and shovel mine in the oil sands in northern Alberta. It has the capacity to generate 194,000 barrels of bitumen per day and has a life expectancy of 50 years. All right, moving on to my favorite part, the horror stories that I experienced while working in the industry. So the first one is regards to invoice attestation. So in my experience, the invoices were massive. Naturally, it's the mining industry. They were hundreds of pages long. It was impossible due to constraints in time and resources to attest the entire invoice. So we only attested 10% of the invoice. For me, being in contracts, it was the rates. So just take a second. Imagine me with my 3 screens. One screen has the contract in PDF scanned rates. This screen, I have my payment certificate, I have the invoice and all of the backup. And on this slide, I have a notes page on this screen, I have a notes page where I write down all of the sort of anomalies and deficiencies that I find. And so again, I only had to attest 10% because that was all that was manageable. And so naturally, I attested the top 3 rates for each contractor, which meant a lot of it didn't get validated or attested. And then I spot checked the third-party invoices for compliance. From there, it moved on to the project construction or engineering manager to attest the resources portion of the invoice. And then it moved on to project controls to attest the overall cost. So the process took a while, as you can imagine. And if an error was found throughout the process, the entire invoice would be sent back to the contractor to fix the errors, resubmit. The process would start over again. And then, of course, the vendor is penalized because they can't get paid until they have that stamp of approval to say that it's been attested and reviewed. And so delay in payment, everything like that, not ideal. And also having visibility to costs once a month when an invoice came in and the accruals were done provided other challenges as well. I'm sure all of us in procurement have experienced a number of change orders. So there were very many of them. And unfortunately, they were usually dictated by the contractor. We were at the mercy of whatever they had to say. If a project at the end of the month was out of funds, but the work was not yet complete, we had no choice but to take their word for it and basically increase the cost, extend the schedule, etc. And so how would this have been done differently in a digital world? Well, accurate and real-time visibility of costs would have avoided a lot of the surprises and difficult conversations with the contractors. A lot of the relationships did focus on cost and progress, but as we all know, there's a lot more to vendor relationships than that. Horror story number 2, audits. So just a little bit of background. I'm sure we all know what they are, but audits are an end of life cycle reaction. They're dispute oriented by nature, and they usually end in settlement style outcomes, pennies on the dollar because of the late reaction. By nature, they're shame, blame, investigate. They don't drive a culture of accountability, governance, and ethics. They're also built around statistical analysis, kind of no different than when I attested an invoice. They're spot checked and they're periodic. What happens if people leave the organization that have that data up here? They're the only ones that can answer certain questions. And they also don't produce behavioral change. It also means you can't use the data in real time. So teams are often left scrambling with their limited knowledge of the experience as it relates to the contractor management across a series of different commercial models. So in a digital world, how is it different? Well, it's front of life cycle, it's real, and it's about prevention and governance. Horror story time. We had a contractor that was audited after they finished a project. Obviously, they shall remain unnamed, but the audit findings came back and found $1.5 million in overbilling, double billing, etc., contract noncompliance. So through audit, is there any guesses I guess, in the Q&A as to how much we were able to recover out of that $1.5 million. So we were only able to recover $300,000, which still left $1.2 million of our money in the contractor's pocket. Now we aren't only hesitant to hire them for future jobs, but the trust is completely eroded, and we clearly had a spend management issue. Additionally, there were also contractors that just happened to go bankrupt after the project was completed. And so how do you recover those funds? We also had a team stood up after the project was completed to deal with the mismanagement of issues like this. So imagine the cost of that as a resource and the years it took to sort those issues out. Finally, cybersecurity. It's a thing. We can't deny it. And just because you, as a large organization, has a cybersecurity incident, it doesn't mean the work stops. In my case, it halted the progress in terms of being able to receive and approve invoices, and as a result, issue payment to a contractor. The contracts were also stored in an internal database. No data was stolen, but internal access was very limited, and eventually the database was deemed unusable. So all of those contracts, all of those rates, all of the spreadsheets that may have been saved on Jim or Bob's desktop, and I'm sorry, it's always Jim or Bob. So I apologize if there are any Jim or Bobs on the line. You did not do anything wrong. But a lot of people have that data just saved that only they're able to access. And so how do you use that as an excuse for not being able to validate an invoice and pay your vendors on time? That's not their issue, it's your issue. The reality is everything that goes into compliance is an insane amount of information overload for humans. If we take an example of 25 contractors that you're managing, there very well could be a combination of over 1,000 rates that should be monitored for compliance. The expectation that there would be 100% accuracy and validation with only the human eye looking at them, that's a dream. And so examples include confirmation of on-site presence with the gate swipes, equipment compliance, standby fees and rental rates, rate compliance as per contract, contract compliance in terms of scope, safety, and productivity, resource management. Do you have the right people working on the job? And third-party compliance and markups there, for instance. So all of that causes gaps in the contractor management process, resulting in contract leakage and misleading data. Now, imagine a world where all of that data is digitized and 100% validated for compliance. And you can extract real value from that data and be able to actually do something with it. So in the digital world, it closes the gap that exists in the incurred to invoice, part of the procure to pay or source to pay process. So you might be using your current ERP, SAP, great example, but it doesn't have the same granularity of data. We've all heard the expression, I'm going to be politically correct and basically say your outputs are only as good as your inputs. And so a science-based approach is always based on facts. So here's an example of some of the dashboard findings available through using a solution such as PayShepherd that allows you to answer some of the key questions that you otherwise would not be able to gain or gather insight into. And so the beauty of this is the valuable insights that it does provide you that lets you make real informed decisions and manage your projects better. And facts, of course, are based on data, and the power of digitized data eliminates the transfer of error. Digitized data provides companies with not only cost savings, but also a culture of accountability and transparency, which can then result in a reduction of contractor spend and better strategic relationships ultimately. The ease of use of an application is also huge. People are busy. You're always going to hear, we don't have time to learn this. We don't have time for something new. But every couple of years, something new comes along and completely changes or derails the way that you do things. In my opinion, and in my experience at the last company, Ariba was not user-friendly and Fieldglass wasn't either. I mean, agree to disagree, but as someone that worked in procurement and contracts, neither provided the insight that were powerful in helping me truly manage my contractors. PayShepherd's ease of use is actually quite outstanding given the insights that it can offer. And so what we do is we ingest contractor data combined with contract information. It validates in the solution and provides you with real meaningful insights. And so compared to other solutions out there, I just want to be clear that we go so far beyond cost. And while cost may be the most important thing to someone in procurement, an EH&S manager doesn't really care about that. Labor relations folks might want to know what the female to male ratio is or what their local workforce content looks like. And so on the right there, we have a visual just to show how small aspects of non-compliance can really add up to big dollars and big findings. So procurement value grows with organizational maturity. It's all about the journey here. Vendor relationship management is the evolution, and no one starts at the top of the curve. You move up and along it. And so what starts as a small closure in the gap, as I mentioned, with the digitized data in that incurred to invoice process, moves along to the point where you're actually able to have those meaningful strategic relationships with your vendors. So the end of manual work when it comes to this is what it all means. It means the end of manual work when it comes to cost validation, cost reporting, and accrual forecasting, payment and invoices, no more validating for hours on end, performance and monitoring evaluation. You can now truly track your vendor performance against the agreed upon metrics and conduct those regular assessments based on the metrics from the solution and provide actual feedback for improvement. Issue resolution, address any conflicts and disputes as they come along during the course of the project instead of waiting to the end. You're able to now ensure swift resolution to minimize disruptions. And communication and coordination. One part of the solution that I personally love is the ability to tag people in the system to when they get a notification to say so and so tag me. That provides visibility, traceability, no more deleting, hiding emails, having to have those conversations in someone's office that don't really get logged and kind of go nowhere. And so I hope this has been eye-opening in what a digital solution can provide, and take away a lot of those aspects that are currently happening with regards to manual contractor management.
Thank you so much, Vita. And I know that for one of our clients, it meant for his entire team more than half a day a week. So if you make the calculation over a year's time, it's quite a few hours that you can save if you actually automate. All right, thank you so much for your time today.